It's time for the weekly Cover Price Top 10 list, which includes one of the most ridiculous entries I think I've ever seen on this list. We'll take a look at that and 9 more up next on this video from Bronzeville Comics. Hello, panelologists. This is Jim from Bronzeville Comics coming to you with another video. Before we get started, please like, comment, subscribe, follow us on the other social medias. Instagram, Bronzeville_comics, on Whatnot at Bronzeville_comics, where we do sales every Monday night at 10 p.m. Eastern time. There is a link in the description of this video that you can sign on to Whatnot and get $10 off your first purchase. In addition to in the description of this video is a link to my eBay store as well as my email. So we're going to dive into the Cover Price Top 10 list. There's some of the usual suspects, some interesting entries that have popped up again, and there's something I can't even begin to figure out. So let's get started. And jump in with number 10, Ultimate Universe number 1. Now, this is a book that came out last year, kind of a predecessor to the Ultimate books that are on this been coming out recently, Spider-Man, Black Panther, and X-Men, and have all been proving very popular, especially in the resale market, which we'll see. Near raws are selling for in the $30 range, and the 9/8s are up over $100. Let's take a look at where is it? Ultimate Universe. Not too many sales, but look at this is kind of interesting. The book was, it was a nothing burger. Nobody really buying it for, too much time. And then all of a sudden, once the Ultimate Spider-Man book became popular, it jumps from a $30 book to a $125 book in a 9.8. That's kind of where it stayed. Only 43 copies on the census, and 33 of those are 9.8s. So I think collectors are going back and trying to find this book so that they can fill in the story that we're seeing emerge in these different individual Ultimate titles. Let's move to number 9 and a good old fan favorite, Nova number 1. First appearance of Richard Rider Nova. And we can see high-grade books in the $100 range. 9.8s are close to 1,000. And let's just see. There has been some news on this, but I think it needs to be proceed with caution, because this book has been speculated on for years that Nova will be coming. We saw the Nova Corps in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. In 2022, a rumor began that a Nova movie was developing at Marvel. It's a release date for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 approached. Many fans thought we would see a tease for the character in the movie. No. Prior to the release, James Gunn took to reveal this was not the case. Since then, news on the Nova project hit a hiatus just this past weekend. Production and development executive at Marvel Studios, Brad Winderbaum, confirmed that a Nova project was in early development. It's important to note that this was immediately followed by a statement saying, "We are going to be developing more than we will actually produce. While the character may be worked on now, there's no guarantee that a final product will make it to the silver screen or streaming services." Again, we've been in this dance with Nova before. This was a book, and I brought up a 9.4, which is the most common grade. And we can see this, the book was always, $150, $200 book in that range. It was getting into 200 as we entered the pandemic, and then the comic boom brought it up to $379, and then up again over 400. And it's been kind of steady over the last year. Not a whole lot of changes. Kind of it tracked down pretty quickly and has kind of stayed there at the $210 range. Now let's look at the 9.8. Now there are 8,000 copies on the census, but only 6.8% of them, 568, are 9.8s. Let's take a look at the price of the 9.8 just for the sake of comparison. And similar, spikes where it came down, and it's been more or less maintaining its value in the $1,000 range. Now we can see here, this was fixed price opposed to auction, which the more recent ones were, was up to $1,275. I think maybe news got somebody to pony up the dough for that. I do think it's more than likely in the long term that we'll see a Nova. The problem Marvel's dealing with right now is, number one, the linchpin of the cosmic part of the MCU was Guardians of the Galaxy. James Gunn's not doing any more work for Marvel. And they're trying to cut down on projects. Will we see Nova as part of a team? Will it be Richard Rider? Will it be Sam Alexander? It remains to be seen. But I do think eventually we'll see this character. But after what Thanos did to Xandar, he might be the only one left, whoever has the mantle there. Let's move on to number 8. And this is the bizarre one. New Guardians, number 1 from 1988 by Steve Englehart and Joe Staton. I don't even know what to say about it. So out of the DC crossover event Millennium, which was, I think, their third crossover event after Crisis and Legends, where the Guardians of the Galaxy disbanded, it was revealed that the Zamarons, who are the Star Sapphires, were kind of the mates of the male Guardians of the Guardians of the Universe. Guardians of the Galaxy is a Marvel team. Guardians of the Universe are the heads of the keepers of the Green Lantern rings in DC Universe. They decided to come to Earth and help with the evolution of the species by giving some folks some powers. But that's not why it's made this list. It's the first appearance of the Hemogoblin. It's the only appearance of the Hemogoblin. And Steve Englehart really, I guess, outdid himself on this one. I think he was trying to make an allegory. So the Hemogoblin was a villain who was created by a South African white supremacist. Remember, this is 1988. This is when apartheid was still the rule of law in South Africa. And he was attacking anyone who was not white, which in South Africa would mean the native people of African descent. So he gets into a fight with the New Guardians, and then it's revealed later that he's died of AIDS. So Steve Englehart's really throwing, like, you know, all the 80s tropes in there: apartheid, HIV, and he had bitten some of the members of the New Guardians. So maybe they're infected with the HIV virus. And there's a character, Extraño, who was a magician, who was an openly gay man, and was, I'm pretty sure he was DC's first openly gay character. And he eventually is revealed to have HIV, and then he's never heard from again after this book is canceled after 12 issues. So let's go to Covrprice's explanation of this weird book. Reddit is a fascinating place to visit faux pas of the past. Screen Rant originally covered the worst DC villain back in August of 2022, but thanks to Redditors, the Hemogoblin is again in the spotlight. The post was about Hemogoblin being the worst, most controversial villain. He's a white supremacist vampire whose powers allow him to bite enemies and give them AIDS, HIV. The post was shared 8 days ago, receiving over 13,000 reactions, and has a thriving comment section of over 500 replies. Pop Culture Brain then highlighted the villain in one of their videos, informing countless thousands more of this dastardly scoundrel. This attention led to a new all-time high sale of $152 for a graded 9.8 copy. Wow, he's already popular, but I wonder if he can reach the upper echelon of DC's cocaine-powered villain infamy, who is, was it issue number 2 or 3 of 4? One of the issues of this series introduced Snowflame, who was a cocaine-powered supervillain who actually played a fairly had a fairly big role in the most recent Harley Quinn animated series season, because it was completely a joke, the most bizarre character. Now, I do think that Englehart was trying to make a social point, and by combining the apartheid white supremacist South African aspect of the villain and his creator, and the HIV aspect, I think it may have been an allegory for the plight of those in sub-Saharan Africa, where AIDS was growing, HIV was growing much quicker than in many other parts of the world, largely due to misinformation. And I think Englehart was trying to make a point there about apartheid and about HIV, and maybe putting it together in a very strange way. But I don't see this book. I wouldn't. Now, if we look at this book on Covrprice, well, let's look at it here. What are Raws going for? They're up to about $15. And this 152 is an aberration. Because there's not much there. There are 19 copies on the census, 6 of them 9.8s. The most recent 9.8 sale, right? It had been selling for $39, $36. Those are the only two previous recorded sales. And then boom, up to 152. Don't hold your breath on this one, maintaining its value. And I don't see Hemogoblin being used by James Gunn in the DCU. Let's move on. Ultimate Spider-Man #1. If you've been watching my videos every week, you know well what this book is. It has been all over the list. Raws in the $80 range, 9.8s, creeping close to 200. Let's see if I have refreshed the page. So last time we checked, there were 404 copies graded, and 362 of them were 9.8s. Let's see if that has changed, or all the way up to 570. Look at that. A lot added in the last week. And let's take a look at the values of the 9.8s. And it's still climbing, right? We're getting, I don't know. It's in the 200, 220 range. This is a little bit misleading on the horizontal axis, because it only goes from 205 to 220. Essentially, it's been holding serve. And when we look at another book a little bit later, just be wary as this population continues to grow, and 90% of them are getting 9.8s. In 2 years, is it going to be the same demand for the 9.8s based on the supply? Star Wars: The High Republic Adventures #4, with the nefarious Niv Drendo. This came out, I guess, last week from Dark Horse. First full appearance of Niv Drendo. First appearances of the Warden, Deblin Drix III, Drigget Parse, Jedi Masters Floor Ridleg, Tani Brewell, Padawans Eric Lambs, and Ian Gorkin. Selling for about $13. Let's go to right. So if you're a Star Wars fan and a key collector, this book is probably high in your want list. Star Wars comics are known for debuting a whole roster of new characters in a single issue. This book introduces not one, not two, but a staggering 8 new characters. It's been a week since the release of this book, and it has seen a meteoric rise. FMV of this book has jumped over 4 times cover price. There's a healthy aftermarket demand, and Star Wars fans have been known to keep a book hot for weeks after its debut. Let's see how the book fares in this week's numbers. We tracked 19 copies sold at a 7-day trend of 201%, with a high sale of $18 for a raw copy and a current near mint fair market value of $12. We'll see. I mean, people are hoping that maybe one of these characters will come to a TV series or something, but there are a lot of characters in the Star Wars universe. If you're a Star Wars fan, go for it. I think there's also is there a variant cover? Yeah. It's just a cover B, though. And I have no idea. If you know, post something in the comments below, if this character is That's not Niv Drendo, is it? I don't know. Maybe it is. Yeah, I think that is Niv Drendo. Okay, let's move on. Number 5 on the list, 8 Billion Genies, #1 by Charles Soule and Ryan Brown. This book selling for about $30 raw, just north of $100 in a 9.8. And there was news. Welcome back, Genies. This book was on previous top 10 lists during its release and subsequently following the announcement that Amazon was looking into the property for a future production. News has been non-existent since the initial announcement, which was back in the fall of 2022, as I recall. Right around, I remember getting this signed at New York Comic Con. The book is now on the radar of every collector out there as we learn that Seth Rogen and Point Grey Pictures will be producing a movie for this property. Not only that, they've also tapped Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse co-director Rodney Rothman to adapt the storyline. Those are heavy hitters in the industry, leading many to believe that this is a film to keep an eye on and a comic to pick up sooner rather than later. Let's take a look at the 9.8s because it's been out for a while. And yeah, it came out in May of 2022. So this book's almost 2 years old now. 945 copies on the census. 87% of them are 9.8s. And this is very indicative. Book comes out when supply of 9.8s is small and demand is high because everybody's talking about the book. This jumped up to like nearly $200 and then very quickly settled in the $100 range, dropping all the way down to $62 in August. It has been hovering in like that 70 to 90 range until this most recent news. So it's the moral of the story is you can probably get the book a lot cheaper if you're patient and understand that option versus in production and all that sort of stuff. The news, there are going to be lulls in the news. It's optioned. Months go by. A director's attached. A script has been written. And so all those steps until we actually see it on the screen. Let's go to number 4. New Mutants 98, the first appearance of Deadpool. $450, $300 for high-grade raws, 9.8s in the $1,300 range. Of course, there is also a newsstand edition. There's a Mark Jewelers, but I'd be a little bit wary of that just because of, the CGC reholdering thing. Know where it came from. Yeah, the 9.8s in the newsstand go for about twice of what the direct do because this is 1991. A lot fewer newsstands out there. Let's take a look at the historical data on this book in a 9.8 because that's what we're going to be most interested in. And we can see, right, it was always, $200-$300 back here during the Obama administration. Then in August 2014, it almost doubles around news from the first movie and kind of hits that new plateau and stays there and stays there and stays there. And all of a sudden, we get the comic boom. And it goes, basically from the beginning of 2020, it's like a $700-ish book. And then it's up to more than 3 times that during the comic boom. And it's been steadily but slowly coming down. So if we look at like the decrease there, it hasn't yet gone I don't think it's gone down to the trend line yet. And then we see this little uptick for maybe some high recent sales, but it's pretty consistent if we look at recent sales in that $1,200 to $1,300 range. And I do think this is a long-term key. There are 24,000 copies on the census, but only about a sixth of them, 4,300, are in 9.8s. So this is a book that does have, for a 90s book, still does have decent value as you go down lower into the 9s. Probably when you're getting down to 858, not worth getting graded. Whatever your opinions on grading, that may vary. I mean, no news. The movie's coming out in July. We've seen a couple of trailers, a bunch of rumors, and James Marsden Cyclops filmed Sonic 3 next to the Deadpool 3 stages. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if anybody's showing up in this film. And, the more they keep under wraps, the better for us as audiences walking into the film. I had a theory today on the film. How about an older, a more mature version of Kitty Pryde in an alternate reality being played by Sigourney Weaver? I don't think they'll do it. That's kind of a deep cut because John Byrne had said in an interview, and this is thanks to a recent episode of Bronze and Modern Gods that I watched, that he based, and you can see it in Byrne's work on the character, he based Kitty Pryde's look on what he thought Sigourney Weaver would have looked like as a teenager. And, his last issue with the X-Men 143, where the aliens, the Brood, are invading the X-Mansion, is kind of an homage to Aliens. So anyway, moving right along. Number 3, Ultimate X-Men. Number 1, this is a recent book. 9.8s would probably only be pre-sales. $10 to $15 hasn't really skyrocketed. There are plenty of variants. I mean, not for nothing. Since this is written and drawn by Peach Momoko, I don't know if I'd want a variant that is somebody other than Peach Momoko. No, and the ratio variants, 1 in 100. They're going to go for more. Yin-Hook Lee and the Mark Brooks. So this one looks like it's the most pricey, is the KRS Eastside Comics Virgin, limited to 600. That is done by Peach Momoko. There is a second print already. So these Ultimate books, let's just keep moving because we're going to be stuck there. Ultimate Spider-Man number 2, which came out last month. High on the list, like $10 to $15 raw. A little early for 9/8. Those may be pre-sales. They may be out yet, but it's kind of close, and there's not enough supply to balance out the demand to get a real idea of the value. Again, I'd be wary of getting 9.8. I mean, certainly for this, as opposed to Ultimate Spider-Man number 1, you can get a copy that's raw in high grade if you want to get it graded yourself. And then number 1, Ultimate Black Panther number 1, the cover A. And this book is going in the 30-ish or more dollar range, and it's getting to about $75, $80 in a 9.8. So that's the top 10. I think we all know why the top 3 are there. All Ultimate Universe, which is the hottest thing going. Let's take a look at the runners-up. This is interesting. New Teen Titans number 1 from 1980. First appearances of Cyborg, Raven, and Starfire. Hollywood Reporter reported that the Teen Titans will be getting the big screen treatment. Not only that, but the same squad most fans are familiar with that led them to this book, which features a second team appearance and origin of fan favorite Titan, comprised of Robin, Beast Boy, Starfire, Raven, Cyborg, and to a lesser extent, not to a lesser extent, I'm sorry, Kid Flash and Wonder Girl. If you read that book, they were main characters. The difference is they're not in the Teen Titans Go TV series. But I don't know how they'll use it and which characters they will use. Will they be teens? This is kind of the second iteration of the Teen Titans. So there are some teens. Beast Boy / Changeling was the youngest of the group. But they were probably like 19 when this started, like college age and moving into adult life. But that's actually a project I'm excited about because I thought one of the things that was always a little more unique about DC as opposed to Marvel was the teenage sidekicks. Number 12, I Heart Skull Crusher number 1, Alessio Zono Virgin 1 per store from Boom. This is something recent. This recently released book has garnered some stellar reviews, the fan base playing catch up as it may have slipped through the cracks for wider audiences. And there's a 1 per store version variant. Maybe keep a lookout on the I Heart Skull Crusher number 1 on the book itself. Spider-Man #1 from 2012, first meeting of Peter Parker and Miles Morales. The newly launched Spectacular Spider-Man series fans are getting a more in-depth look at Marvel's two Spider-Men. Their relationship is evolving, causing collectors to return to the roots of this book. Dubbed the first meeting of Miles and Peter, it varies drastically from what we see playing out in the new Spider-Man series. Instead of fighting it out, they're developing a friendship. The fan base is all up in the feels. Wolverine #36, first appearance of Helverine. He's getting his own book. Edge of the Spider-Verse #1, the surprise variant, which was 1 to 3 copies per store. This book has been hanging around the list for several weeks. Avengers Twilight #1, the first appearance of James Stark. Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars #8, the origin of the black suit. This book was trending for months thanks to Madam Web and the appearance of Julia Carpenter's Spider-Woman. Not really. But we didn't quite get that, but it hasn't stopped the book from trending. Most know it as the origin of the black suit that would become Venom. That's the connection. I mean, it is the second appearance of Julia Carpenter's Spider-Woman, but that doesn't matter. That matters about as much as the fact that the Chameleon's first appearance is an Amazing Spider-Man 1. And how about this? Alien Worlds #4 from Pacific Comics. Classic Dave Stevens cover. The documentary, I believe it's on Amazon, about Dave Stevens has really sparked interest. And I see it all over the YouTubes of collectors just, jumping at these Dave Stevens covers. And what's interesting about the Stevens covers is like this: Pacific Comics. Dave Stevens also created Rocketeer in Star Slayer #2 as the backup feature from Pacific Comics. He also did work for Eclipse and Comico, all these 80s independent publishers on just random issues of Johnny Quest or DN Agents, Airboy. And one of the things that I found about this is if you come across a collection, like even at a flea market, that has some of those books in it, if it's an 80s collection with some indies, if it hasn't been picked through, Dave Stevens could be there. X-Men 27, the Peach Moko New Champions. This is the first appearance of Maystorm, or first cover appearance. And then #20, Immortal Iron Fist #2 from 2006. Iron Fist on Netflix had its fans, but it was the least favorable of the 5 series. However, there have been recent rumors that the Living Weapon may return to the screen, albeit with a female behind the superhero this time. Fans immediately thought of this book featuring the first appearance of Wu Aoshi, a female Iron Fist from past generations. Online theories are growing crazy, taking one of the best parts from Iron Fist, Colleen Wing, and bestowing the Iron Fist title upon her for the reboot, bringing about a depiction of Wu Aoshi as featured in this book. Colleen Wing was, I thought, the best part of that Netflix series. And if they're going to incorporate the characters from the Netflix series, we've already seen Daredevil. Evidently, we're getting Foggy and Karen Page. We've seen Kingpin. I'm all for it, except for Iron Fist. We could do without Danny Rand. Sorry. But all the other, and we're getting Punisher, all the other series were stellar. Although, we do have a crossover because Micro is also Ben Grimm. So, anyway. So, that's going to do it for this video. Are you reading the Ultimate titles? Do you have New Guardians #1? And do you want it for the first appearance of the Hemogoblin? You're going to find it in back issue bins and dollar bins at best. Anyway, I'd like to thank everyone for stopping by. I really appreciate those that watch my silly little videos. And you can take a look at a couple of my other videos here. And this is Jim saying until next time, enjoy your comics.